Blood trickled from Kalia Jordan's lip as she sprawled on Crescent Liberty Bank's polished floor in Atlanta, security guards pinning her wrists. Customers gawked, whispering "thief" at the 15-year-old black girl in a faded red jacket, clutching a torn envelope of $10,000. They assumed she'd stolen it, but her bruised face cracked into a smirk. "They'll regret this," she rasped, knowing her father owned the bank. Chaos would follow, reshaping her life forever. What happens when the truth flips their world? Go upside down. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's episode will leave you speechless. Kalia Jordan stepped through the gleaming glass doors of Crescent Liberty Bank in downtown Atlanta, her sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished granite tiles. The lobby buzzed with the hum of busy tellers and the rustle of crisp dollar bills, a towering space where sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off the steel counters. She was 15, wiry and tall for her age, with a faded red jacket hanging loose over her frame and ripped jeans that showed scuffed knees from years of climbing trees and dodging trouble. In her left hand, she gripped a worn manila envelope, its edges frayed from being stuffed with $10,000 in cash. Her dark eyes sparkled with a mix of nerves and pride as she took in the scene, her braided ponytail swaying slightly with each step. This wasn't just a trip to the bank. This was her moment, her first real shot at something big. She'd earned every penny of that money herself, piecing it together over months. $5,000 came from a coding contest she'd won last spring, outsmarting college kids twice her age with a program that streamlined food bank deliveries. The other half was a pile of birthday gifts, mostly 20s and 50s from aunts and uncles who saw her potential, even if they couldn't afford much themselves. Kalia had big plans. For it, a tech project, maybe an app to help kids like her learn programming without fancy tutors or gleaming laptops. She'd sketched the idea on napkins late at night, her mind racing with loops and variables, while her mum snored softly in the next room. Today was about planting the seed, depositing the cash into her savings account, a quiet milestone she could build on. She wanted to prove she could stand on her own. No handouts, no shortcuts, just grit and code. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish and ink, and Kalia adjusted her grip on the envelope, feeling its weight against her palm. She joined the line, a snaking trail of people in pressed suits and worn overalls, all clutching checks or withdrawal slips. Above her, a massive digital clock ticked toward noon, its red numbers glowing against the stark white wall. She didn't mind waiting. She'd waited for everything worth having. Her first library card, the hand-me-down computer she'd fixed herself, the scholarship letter that came in a rain-soaked envelope last year. This was no different. She shifted her weight, imagining the teller's nod when she slid the cash across the counter, the satisfying click as it locked into her account. One day she'd turn this into something real, something that'd make her mum smile and shut up the kids who called her that nerd from the projects. But as she stood there, soaking in the hum of the lobby, a prickle ran up her neck. She glanced around, catching the edges of stairs that didn't quite meet her eyes. A teller with slicked-back hair and a pinstriped vest flicked his gaze over her, then leaned toward his co-worker, a woman with crimson lipstick and a pinched frown. Their heads dipped close, voices too low to catch, but Kalia saw the woman's lips curl into something sharp, something dismissive. She tugged her jacket tighter, suddenly aware of how it hung off her shoulders, how her jeans didn't match the polished heels clicking past her. She wasn't like the man in the navy blazer who'd breezed in 10 minutes ago, greeted with a handshake and a "Right this way, sir." No one rushed to her side, no one smiled. She was invisible, or worse, a smudge they wanted to wipe away. The line inched forward, and Kalia's turn came after 20 minutes, her legs stiff from standing. She stepped up to the counter, facing a man whose name tag read Victor Grayson, Manager. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered with a jawline carved from stone, his grey suit crisp and his tie a slash of deep blue. His hazel eyes skimmed her from head to toe, lingering on the scuffed toes of her sneakers. The envelope creased from her grip. Kalia squared her shoulders, refusing to shrink under that look, and slid the envelope forward. I'd like to deposit this into my savings account, she said, her voice steady, clipped with the confidence she'd practiced in her bedroom mirror. Victor didn't touch the envelope. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. $10,000, huh? His tone was slow, dripping with something Kalia couldn't quite name, but felt like a shove. Where'd a kid like you get that kind of cash? The question landed heavy, and the lobby seemed to quiet around her, a dozen heads turning just enough to listen. Kalia's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face smooth, her eyes locked on his. I won a coding contest. The rest is birthday money from my family, it's mine. His smirk widened, showing teeth, and he tapped a pen against the counter, the sound a staccato beat in the silence. Coding contest. Birthday money. That's a nice story. He didn't believe her. She could see it in the way his brows arched, the way he glanced at the teller next to him, a wiry guy with a buzz cut who nodded like they shared a secret. Victor leaned forward, resting his elbows on the counter, his voice dropping low but loud enough for the nearest customers to catch. You sure this isn't someone else's money? Maybe you're running an errand for the wrong crowd. Kalia's stomach twisted, heat flooding her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. It's my money, I've got an account here, check it. She slid her ID across, a flimsy plastic card with her name and a grainy photo, her proof against his doubt. Victor took it, holding it up to the light like it might be fake, then tossed it back with a flick of his wrist. We'll see about that, he muttered, typing something into his computer. The screen glowed blue, casting shadows across his face, and Kalia waited, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. She'd expected questions, maybe a form or two, not this. Not a man with a badge deciding she didn't belong. The buzz-cut teller leaned over, whispering something Kalia couldn't hear, and Victor's eyes narrowed. 10,000 in cash, he said louder now, drawing more stares. That's a lot for someone your age. Someone dressed like you. The words stung, sharp and deliberate, and Kalia felt the weight of every gaze in the room, judging her jacket, her braids, her skin. She opened her mouth to argue, but Victor cut her off, standing abruptly. I think we need security on this one, can't be too careful. Before she could process the words, 2 guards loomed behind her, their boots thudding against the floor. One was a hulking man with a shaved head, the other lean with a scar slicing his cheek. Step back, miss, the scarred one barked, grabbing her arm. Kalia yanked free, her envelope slipping to the counter. I'm a customer, I'm not doing anything wrong. Her voice rose, cracking with frustration, but Victor waved a hand, dismissing her like a fly. Take her to the floor, we'll sort this out. The guards didn't hesitate. The big one seized her shoulders, slamming her down with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. Her knees hit the granite, pain jolting up her legs, and the scarred one pinned her wrists, twisting until she gasped. The envelope fluttered to the ground, bills spilling out like confetti, and the crowd murmured, a mix of shock and smug agreement. Told you she didn't belong, someone whispered. Victor stood over her, arms crossed, his smirk now a full grin. Should have known better than to try that here, he said, his voice thick with triumph. Kalia's cheek pressed against the cold stone, her lip splitting as it grazed a rough edge, a trickle of blood pooling beneath her. Pain throbbed through her, but anger burned hotter. She fumbled with her free hand, slipping her phone from her pocket, thumbing the record button under her jacket. The red light blinked on, capturing every word, every grunt, every smug chuckle from Victor. She didn't cry out, didn't beg. She glared up at him, her mind racing. They thought they'd won, thought they'd broken her. They were wrong. This was just the beginning, and she'd make sure they paid. The security office of Crescent Liberty Bank smelled like stale coffee and sweat, a cramped box tucked behind the lobby with flickering fluorescent lights casting jagged shadows across the concrete walls. Kalia Jordan sat on a metal chair, her wrists still raw from the guard's grip, the taste of blood lingering on her split lip. Her faded red jacket hung crooked, one sleeve torn at the seam, and her envelope of $10,000 sat crumpled on the table, its contents recounted twice by a scowling officer in a cheap polyester uniform. The clock on the wall ticked. Past 1 in the afternoon, each second stretching into a tight coil of fury in her chest. She'd been here an hour, dragged from the lobby floor after Victor Grayson's smug order, her body aching but her mind sharp as a blade. She'd kept her phone hidden, the recording still running, capturing every muttered slur and heavy bootstep. The door swung open, and Victor stepped in, his grey suit pristine despite the chaos he'd unleashed. His hazel eyes glinted with irritation, not remorse, as he leaned against the wall, arms folded tight. Behind him, the scarred guard from earlier lingered, cracking his knuckles like he hoped for round two. Kalia didn't flinch. She stared Victor down, her dark gaze steady, and slid her bank card across the table, its chipped edge scraping the metal. "Check it," she said, her voice low but firm, cutting through the stale air. "That's my account. I told you I belong here." Victor's lip twitched, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, but he snatched the card and handed it to the officer without breaking eye contact. The man tapped at a grimy laptop, the screen flickering as it pulled up her details. Kalia Jordan. Savings account active, balance 0 until today. Legit. Victor's jaw tightened, a muscle pulsing beneath his stubbled cheek. He didn't want to believe it, didn't want to admit he'd misjudged her, but the proof glared back at him in black and white. The officer shrugged, muttering, "She's clear," and slid the card back. Kalia stood, brushing off her jeans, her bruised knees throbbing with each move. She snatched her envelope, clutching it close, and faced Victor head-on. "You owe me an apology," she said, her words sharp as glass. "You had me slammed to the floor for nothing. Say it." The room went still, the guard shifting uneasily, but Victor's smirk returned, thinner this time, forced. "Fine," he spat, the word dripping with venom. "Sorry, kid, misunderstanding. Now get out." She didn't smile, didn't nod. She pocketed her phone, the recording safely stopped, and walked out, her sneakers echoing in the narrow hall. Back in the lobby, heads turned again, but the whispers had shifted, tinged with confusion instead of contempt. Kalia ignored them, her mind racing. She'd won this round, forced Victor to choke on his own arrogance, but it wasn't enough. Not after the blood, the bruises, the way he'd looked at her like she was trash. She stepped into the humid Atlanta afternoon, the sun glaring off the bank's glass facade, and pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the video file. 90 minutes of raw audio. Victor's sneers, the guard's grunts, her own defiant voice. She uploaded it to X, fingers trembling with adrenaline, and tagged Crescent Liberty Bank with a caption, "This is how they treat black customers. Share if you've had enough." Within minutes, the post buzzed with life. Retweets climbed into the dozens, then hundreds, notifications flooding her screen like a tidal wave. Strangers commented, "Disgusting. I've seen this too. Boycott them." By 3 o'clock, it hit 10,000 views, a local news station picking it up with a headline, "Teen humiliated at Crescent Liberty, racism caught on tape." Kalia sat on a splintered bench outside her apartment complex, the concrete warm against her thighs, watching the numbers soar. Her split lips stung as she grinned, a fierce, jagged thing. She'd done it, exposed them. The bank's pristine image was cracking, and Victor's smug face would be the first to feel the heat. She leaned back, imagining his panic, the calls piling up at headquarters. Justice wasn't just a word now, it was hers. But Victor wasn't pacing or sweating. Back at the bank, he sat in his office, a sleek cube with frosted glass walls and a mahogany desk, staring at his monitor. The video played on loop, Kalia's voice echoing through his speakers, each word a splinter under his skin. His fingers drummed a furious rhythm on the desk, his tie loosened, a vein bulging at his temple. He'd apologized, let her go, thought it'd end there. Now this? His phone buzzed with texts from Evelyn Hart, the CEO, her messages curt. "Fix. This now." Public outrage was a wildfire, and he was the match. He couldn't let some kid, some nobody in a ratty jacket, unravel everything he'd built. Not his reputation, not his control. He picked up his desk phone, dialing a number he kept for emergencies, his voice dropping to a hiss as it connected. "It's Grayson. I need you to dig into someone." Kalia Jordan, 15, lives in the East Side projects. She's got a video. Out making trouble, find something, anything to shut her down. On the other end, a gravelly voice chuckled, belonging to a private investigator named Reese, a man with a knack for turning dirt into gold. How deep? Reese asked, already cracking his knuckles. Victor's eyes darkened, fixed on the screen, where Kalia's post ticked past 20,000 views. As deep as it takes, I want her buried. Kalia didn't know it yet, but her victory was a mirage, a fleeting glow before the storm. She walked home, the envelope tucked into her waistband, her steps light with triumph. The video was her weapon, her proof, and the world was listening. She pictured Victor squirming, maybe even fired by morning. Her apartment loomed ahead, a sagging brick building with peeling paint and a busted streetlight flickering in the dusk. She climbed the stairs, her mom's voice drifting through the thin walls, humming an old gospel tune. Kalia felt invincible, like she'd cracked open a door no one could shut. But as she slipped inside, locking the deadbolt behind her, Reese was already on the move, a shadow creeping toward her life with a plan to turn her win into ash. What do you think about Kalia's fight so far? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think she's right to take on the bank, or number 2 if you play it safe in her shoes. If you're rooting for her to keep swinging against injustice, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because tomorrow's twist will flip everything you expect. Ever wonder how far someone like Victor will go to save his skin? Picture this. What if Kalia's next step forward lands her in a trap she can't outsmart? Stick around to find out what's lurking in the shadows for her next move. Night draped over Kalia Jordan's rundown Atlanta neighborhood like a heavy quilt, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and damp asphalt. Her apartment building crouched at the edge of a potholed street, its brick facade stained with years of neglect, windows glowing faintly from flickering bulbs. Inside, Kalia sprawled on a threadbare couch, her phone buzzing non-stop with notifications. The video she'd posted hours ago had ballooned past 50,000 views, a wildfire of outrage scorching Crescent Liberty Bank's name. She scrolled through comments, her split lip curling into a tired smile at words like hero and keep fighting. Her faded red jacket lay crumpled beside her, the torn sleeve a badge of her earlier battle. She thought she'd won, that Victor Grayson's forced apology was the end of it. The world was watching now and she felt untouchable. Her $10,000 still safe in her waistband, dreams of coding her future intact. Outside, a shadow moved through the alley, silent as a cat. Reese, the private investigator Victor had called, was a wiry man in his 50s with a pockmarked face and eyes like dull coins. He wore a black hoodie blending into the dark, a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Victor's orders echoed in his head. Bury Kalia. Make her regret. That video. Reese had spent the afternoon digging, hacking into public records, tracing her life. She was clean, too clean, a scholarship kid with no dirt to sling, so he'd make some. He crouched beside the building's rusted fire escape, pulling out a sleek device that piggybacked onto the weak Wi-Fi signal leaking from Kalia's apartment. Her old laptop, a refurbished clunker she'd left powered on, was his target. With a few keystrokes, he slipped past its flimsy firewall, planting files, fake bank server logs, forged code snippets, a digital trail screaming she'd hacked Crescent. Liberty Systems. Inside, Kalia yawned, oblivious, her mom clattering dishes in the kitchen. The clock read 10:30, and the street outside was quiet, save for the occasional bark of a stray dog. Reese finished his work, uploading a final touch. An email from Kalia's account to a non-existent accomplice, bragging about crashing the bank's network. He smirked, pocketing his gear, and dialed a burner phone. It's done, he rasped to the cop Victor had on speed dial, a crooked officer named Hargrove with a buzz cut and a gambling debt. She's a cyber criminal now. Move fast. Reese melted back into the night, leaving no trace, his job a ticking bomb set to blow Kalia's life apart. At 11:15, the street erupted. 3 police cruisers screeched to a halt outside Kalia's building, their lights slashing red and blue across the cracked pavement. Doors slammed and boots pounded up the rickety stairs, neighbors peeking through curtains as shouts echoed. Kalia jolted upright, her phone slipping to the floor, the buzz of notifications drowned by a fist hammering her door. "Atlanta PD!" "Open up!" Her mom Lena rushed from the kitchen, a dish towel still in her hands, her face creasing with panic. "What's happening?" she whispered, but Kalia had no answer, her heart thudding as the door rattled under another blow. She stumbled to it, cracking it open, and Hargrove barged in, his badge glinting under the dim hall light. "We've got a warrant," he barked, shoving a crumpled paper at Lena. "Kalia Jordan, you're under arrest for hacking Crescent Liberty Bank systems." 6 officers flooded the apartment, their radios crackling, guns drawn like she was some mastermind. Kalia froze, her mind spinning. "Hacking? I didn't do anything," she shouted, but Hargrove grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. Her mom lunged forward, yelling, "She's a kid, let her go!" But another cop blocked her, pinning Lena against the wall as she sobbed. Neighbors clustered outside, phones up, filming the chaos, their murmurs a dull roar. "Always knew she was trouble," one muttered, shaking his head. Hargrove dragged Kalia to her bedroom, a tiny space with peeling wallpaper and a desk cluttered with coding books. He yanked her. Laptop open, the screen glowing with Reese's planted evidence, server logs, emails, a neon sign screaming guilt. "Explain this," he sneered, shoving it in her face. Kalia's stomach dropped, her breath catching as she scanned the files. "That's not mine. Someone put it there," she cried, but Hargrove laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Tell it." "To the judge, sweetheart." He cuffed her, the metal biting into her raw wrists, and hauled her out, her sneakers dragging across the splintered floor. Lena wailed, clawing at the air, but the cops pushed her back, slamming the door in her face. Outside, the night swallowed Kalia as Hargrove shoved her into a cruiser, her head banging against the frame. The crowd gawked, some filming, others jeering, "Thief! Hacker!" Her envelope of cash slipped from her waistband, fluttering to the ground, and a cop snatched it, tucking it into his belt. "Evidence," he grunted, though his smirk said otherwise. The car peeled out, sirens wailing, and Kalia stared through the smudged window, her world unraveling. She'd beaten Victor in the lobby, turned his bank into a laughingstock with her video. This couldn't be real, it had to be a mistake. But the cuffs were cold, the evidence fake, but damning, and her triumph felt like a cruel joke. Back at Crescent Liberty, Victor sat in his office, the lights dim, a tumbler of whiskey sweating on his desk. His phone pinged with a text from Reese. "She's down, news next." He leaned back, swirling the amber liquid, a slow grin spreading across his face. He'd called in a favor with a reporter at Channel 6, a greasy guy named Paul who owed him for burying a DUI. By midnight, the story hit. Teen behind viral bank video arrested for cybercrime. The screen flashed Kalia's school photo, her braids neat, her smile bright, now captioned with "suspect" in bold red. Paul's voiceover dripped with venom. "Kalia Jordan, 15, thought she could expose Crescent Liberty. Turns out, she's the real criminal, hacking their systems in a twisted revenge plot." Victor watched, sipping his drink, the whiskey burning his throat. The video's outrage flipped overnight, comments shifting to "she fooled us" and "lock her up." He'd turned her weapon against her, painted her as a delinquent mastermind, a black girl from the projects who'd overstepped and paid the price. His phone buzzed again, Evelyn Hart's name lighting up the screen. "Good work," her message read. "Keep it tight." Victor nodded to himself, the bank's reputation clawing back from the brink. Kalia thought she'd won with her little recording, thought she could humiliate him and walk away. She was wrong. This was his game now, and he'd play it dirty. Kalia sat in the cruiser, her head pounding, the city blurring past in streaks of light. Her phone was gone, confiscated, her video buried under the new narrative. She replayed the day, the lobby, the guards, Victor's smirk. This arrest wasn't random. It was too fast, too perfect. Her chest tightened as realization sank in. He'd done this. Victor had struck back, harder, smarter, turning her victory into a noose. She banged her head against the seat, frustration, boiling over. She'd exposed him, made him bleed, and now he'd framed her for something she'd never touch. The car jolted to a stop at the precinct, and Hargrove yanked her out, her knees buckling on the asphalt. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She glared into the dark, her mind racing. This wasn't over, not yet. The Atlanta courthouse loomed like a grey monolith under a bruised sky, its stone steps slick with morning dew as Kalia Jordan shuffled up them, her wrists chafed from cuffs that had bitten into her skin for 3 sleepless days. Her faded red jacket was gone, replaced by a scratchy orange jumpsuit that hung loose on her wiry frame, her braided ponytail limp from restless nights in a cell that reeked of bleach and despair. The clock tower chimed 9, a hollow clang echoing through the humid air, as she was led into a courtroom packed with restless bodies. Reporters jostled in the back, their pens scratching furiously, while a sparse crowd of onlookers murmured. Behind wooden benches polished to a dull sheen, Kalia's mom, Lena, sat in the front row, her hands twisted into knots, eyes red from crying since the raid tore their home apart. Kalia stood at the defendant's table, her legs trembling, but her chin high, facing a judge with a face like weathered granite and a gavel that gleamed under fluorescent lights. The prosecutor, a wiry man named Ellison with a pinched nose and a suit 2 sizes too big, paced before the bench, his voice sharp as he laid out the charges. Kalia Jordan, 15, hacked Crescent Liberty Bank's systems, causing chaos after her failed stunt in their lobby, he declared, holding up printouts of Reese's forged server logs, the emails that branded her a cybercriminal. Kalia's stomach churned, the lies twisting tighter around her, but she kept her gaze steady, scanning the room. Victor Grayson sat near the prosecution, his grey suit crisp, a faint smirk tugging at his lips as he watched her squirm. He thought. He'd won, thought this trial would bury her for good. Her public defender, a harried woman named Ms. Torres with greying curls and a stack of files under her arm, stood beside her, scribbling notes on a legal pad. Kalia had barely met her, assigned, just yesterday. But there was a spark in Torres's tired eyes, a flicker of fight that gave her a shred of hope. The prosecution droned on, piling fake evidence like bricks, timestamps, IP addresses, a digital trail so tight it seemed airtight. "She's a threat," Ellison snapped, jabbing a finger at Kalia, a delinquent who turned a petty grudge into a felony. The judge's brow furrowed, his pen tapping the desk, and Kalia felt the room tilt, the weight of their stares pressing her down. She hadn't hacked anything. She'd exposed Victor, and now he'd spun her truth into this nightmare. Torres stood, smoothing her rumpled blazer, and cleared her throat. "Your Honor, this case stinks of fabrication," she said, her voice cutting through the hum. She held up Kalia's laptop, its scratched casing a stark contrast to the glossy courtroom. "My client's a coder, yes, but these files, planted. Look at the metadata." She clicked through slides on a projector, the screen flickering to life with timestamps that didn't match Kalia's usage logs, code signatures too sloppy for her meticulous style. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Torres paced, her words gaining steam. "Someone with access framed her, and I'd bet it ties back to Crescent Liberty. They're covering their tracks after her video went viral," Ellison sputtered, his face reddening, but Torres didn't stop. She called a tech expert, a lanky man named Dr. Patel with wire-rimmed glasses, who dissected the evidence in dry, precise terms. "These files were uploaded remotely hours after her arrest," he said, pointing to a graph of network activity. "Her laptop was offline when this hack happened." The judge leaned forward, squinting at the screen, and Victor's smirk faltered, his fingers tightening on his chair. Kalia's pulse raced, hope flickering like a match in the dark. The crowd buzzed, reporters scribbling faster, and Lena clutched her purse, whispering prayers under her breath. The prosecutor tried to counter, waving the forged emails, but Torres pounced. "Why no forensic trace of Kalia sending these? No fingerprints, no login history. It's a ghost job." She turned to the judge, her voice rising. "This is retaliation, plain and simple. She exposed their racism and they've cooked this up to silence her." The room erupted, shouts bouncing off the walls, and the judge banged his gavel, demanding order. Kalia stood still, her bruised knees aching, watching Victor shift in his seat, his hazel eyes darting to the exit. The truth was clawing its way out, and she could taste it, sharp and sweet. After hours of back and forth, the judge rubbed his temples, his voice gravelly as he spoke. The evidence is inconsistent. Charges dismissed. The gavel cracked down, a sound that jolted through Kalia like lightning. Cheers erupted, strangers clapping, Lena sobbing into her hands. Kalia's legs nearly buckled, relief flooding her as Torres squeezed her shoulder, whispering, "You're free." She walked out of the courthouse, the jumpsuit swapped for her ripped jeans and a borrowed t-shirt, the sun blinding as she stepped onto the steps. A small crowd gathered, some filming, others shouting, "You showed them!" She spotted Victor, across the plaza, his face tight and grinned, her split lip stinging. "You're done," she called, her voice carrying over the noise. He turned away, disappearing into the throng, but she felt invincible, the world tilting back in her favor. She hugged Lena, the warmth of her mum's arms grounding her, and they laughed, a shaky, jagged sound. The video had worked, the trial had crumbled Victor's lie, and she was out. Her $10,000, confiscated during the raid, was promised back by Torres, a small win to rebuild her tech dreams. She breathed deep, the air tasting of freedom, imagining headlines shifting. Teen cleared, bank exposed. She'd beaten him again, turned his frame up into dust. The crowd dispersed, and she started down the steps, her sneakers slapping. The stone ready to go home to sleep to plan her next move. But Victor wasn't done. Across town in a dim parking garage, he leaned against his sleek black sedan, the engine still ticking as it cooled. His phone pressed to his ear. He hissed into it, his voice low and venomous. "Hargrove, it's me. She's out. I need her. Back in, fast." The cop on the other end, the same one who'd raided her home, grunted in agreement, his gambling debt a leash Victor yanked tight. "Plant something. Drugs, whatever sticks. Her school's the spot. Do it tonight." Hargrove chuckled, a greasy sound. "Got it, she won't see it coming." Victor hung up, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat, his grin returning, colder now, predatory. Kalia thought she'd won, thought the courtroom was the end. She was wrong. He'd hit harder this time, make sure she stayed down. Kalia didn't know it yet. But her victory was a fleeting spark, a candle flickering before a gust. She walked home with Lena, the city alive around her, horns blaring, pigeons scattering from the sidewalk. Her bruises ached, but her spirit soared, the weight of the cuffs a fading memory. She'd outsmarted them, turned their lies inside out. But as dusk settled, Hargrove was already moving, a baggie of white powder in his pocket, his cruiser idling near her school. Victor's next blow was primed, a trap she'd never suspect, ready to snap shut and drag her back into the dark. What's your take on Kalia's courtroom win? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think she's got the guts to keep fighting, or number 2 if you'd tell her to quit while she's ahead. If you're stunned by Victor's dirty comeback, hit that like button and subscribe, because tomorrow's chapter will twist the knife deeper. Ever wonder how low someone will stoop to crush a kid who dared to stand up? What if Kalia's next fall comes from a place she trusts most? Stay tuned to see where this battle takes her next. The morning sun sliced through the grimy windows of Eastside High, a sprawling brick school on Atlanta's fringes, its halls alive with the clamor of lockers slamming and sneakers squeaking on linoleum. Kalia Jordan walked through the double doors, her bruised knees still tender from the courthouse steps, her ripped jeans swapped for a clean pair, and a borrowed grey hoodie pulled tight against the chill. She'd slept hard last night, the first real rest since the bank fiasco, her mom's soft humming a lullaby that drowned out the echoes of cuffs and gavels. The trial wind buzzed in her veins, a fragile high she clung to as she moved toward her locker, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She'd beaten Victor Grayson, walked free, and today felt like a reset, a chance to reclaim her coding dreams before the next shoe dropped. The halls smelled of sweat and cheap perfume, a tangle of voices bouncing off the chipped blue walls as kids jostled past her. She kept her head down, avoiding the stares, some curious, some hostile. Her viral video had made her a name here, a mix of hero and pariah, whispers trailing her like shadows. "That's the bank girl," a kid muttered, elbowing his friend. Kalia ignored it, twisting the dial on her locker, its metal door creaking. "Open." She reached for her math book, her fingers brushing the spine, when a ripple of tension cut through the noise. Footsteps thudded behind her, deliberate and heavy, and she turned, her pulse kicking up, to see Officer Hargrove striding down the hall, his buzz cut gleaming under the lights, 2 school security guards flanking him. "Jordan," Hargrove barked, his voice slicing through the chatter. "Step away from the locker." Kids froze, heads swiveling, phones slipping out of pockets to record. Kalia's stomach sank, a cold dread pooling as she backed up, her hands raised. "What's this about? I just got cleared," she said. But Hargrove's grin was all teeth, a predator's gleam. He nodded to the guards who shoved past her, one prying the locker open wider while the other rummaged inside. The crowd thickened, a semicircle of wide eyes and hushed gasps, and Kalia's breath hitched as the guard pulled out a clear baggie, white powder glinting inside. "Well, look at this," Hargrove said, loud enough for the whole hall to hear, holding it up like a trophy. "Guess you're not so innocent after all." The air sucked out of the hall, kids whispering, "Drugs? Her?" Kalia's knees buckled, her mind reeling. "That's not mine," she shouted, lunging forward. But Hargrove grabbed her arm, twisting it until she winced. "Sure it's not," he sneered, cuffing her wrists with a snap of metal. "You're under arrest. Possession with intent." The guards hauled her back, her sneakers scraping the floor, and the crowd erupted, some filming, others jeering. "Told you she was bad news." Her backpack hit the ground, spilling pencils and a crumpled coding notebook, and Hargrove kicked it aside, his boot leaving a smear on the pages. She thrashed, her voice raw. "You planted that! This is Victor again!" But no one listened. The hall a blur of faces turning against her. The principal, a wiry man named Mr. Tate with a receding hairline and a perpetual frown, emerged from his office, drawn by the commotion. He took one look at the baggie, then at Kalia, his lips thinning. "Zero tolerance," he said, his tone flat, final. "You're expelled, effective immediately." Kalia's chest caved, her breath ragged. "Expelled? I didn't do this," she cried. But Tate turned away, signaling the guards to take her. Hargrove dragged her out, the double doors banging shut behind them, the last thing she saw her locker. Gaping open, a tomb for her future. The cruiser waited outside, its engine rumbling, and he shoved her in, her head banging the frame. She sank into the seat, tears pricking her eyes, the weight of it crushing her. School was her lifeline, her ticket out, and now it was gone. By noon, the story hit the airwaves, a venomous wave washing over Atlanta. Channel 6 led the charge, Paul's greasy voice dripping through every TV in the city. Kalia Jordan, recently cleared of hacking charges, arrested again, this time for drugs at Eastside High. The screen flashed her mugshot, her braids, limp, her eyes hollow, captioned "Repeat Offender" in stark white letters. News vans swarmed the school, reporters interviewing kids who swore they'd always known she was trouble, their lies piling up like bricks. Social media flipped, her viral video drowned by hashtags "Rook Kalia the Con," "Rook Drug Bust." Comments stabbed at her. "Faked the bank thing for attention. Typical." Her mom, Lena, watched from their apartment, the TV's glow reflecting off her tears as she clutched a cracked mug, whispering, "Not my girl, not my." Kalia sat in a holding cell, the concrete walls cold against her back, her hoodie confiscated, leaving her shivering in a thin t-shirt. Her tech dreams flickered out, the app she'd sketched on napkins now a cruel memory. She'd beaten the hacking charge, walked out of court of Victor, and now this. Her fists clenched, nails digging into her palms, sobs choking her throat. Victor had done this, she knew it, his shadow stretching longer, darker, turning her wins into ash. The cell door clanged, a guard tossing her a stale sandwich she didn't touch, her mind spinning. How had they gotten to her locker? How had they turned her school against her? She wiped her face, resolve hardening through the tears. She'd fight somehow. But the hole felt deeper now, the walls steeper. Across town, Victor Grayson stood on the steps of Crescent Liberty Bank, the glass facade gleaming behind him as cameras clicked and microphones thrust forward. He'd called. A press conference. His grey suit tailored sharp, his tie a slash of midnight blue against a white shirt. The sun dipped low, casting his shadow long across the plaza, and he adjusted his cuffs, his grin polished for the spotlight. "Justice prevails," he said, his voice smooth, commanding. "Kalia Jordan's actions show who she really is, a threat, not a victim. Crescent Liberty stands for integrity, and we won't let lies tarnish us." Reporters nodded, scribbling, the narrative shifting back to his favor. The video's outrage faded, replaced by a new story: the delinquent black girl caught red-handed. He paused, letting the words sink in, then leaned closer to the mics, his tone dropping with mock regret. "It's a shame, really. She had potential, but some people can't rise above their roots." The crowd murmured approval, and Victor's hazel eyes glinted, victory tasting sweeter than whiskey. He'd turned her triumph into a noose, flipped the script so tight no one questioned it, but he wasn't done. As the cameras cut, he slipped into the bank, dialing a new number, his voice a low growl. "Get some guys together. Her family's next. Trash the place. Make it personal." The thug on the other end grunted assent, and Victor hung up, leaning back in his chair. Kalia thought she could taunt him on those courthouse steps, call him done. She'd learn soon enough. He didn't lose. Kalia didn't hear his words, didn't see his grin. She sat in the cell, her breath fogging in the chill, replaying the locker, the baggy Hargrove's sneer. It was a setup, cleaner than the hacking, more brutal. Her expulsion cut deeper than the cuffs. Her school record a scarlet letter now. Drug dealer, dropout. The media frenzy pounded her name into the dirt, and she felt it, the weight of a city, turning its back. She pressed her forehead to the wall, whispering, "Why me?" through cracked lips. Victor had struck again, harder, smarter, shredding her life piece by piece. She didn't know his next move was already in motion. A midnight. Raid aimed at her home, her mom, her last safe place. The fight wasn't over, but the ground beneath her was crumbling fast. Midnight draped Kalia Jordan's apartment building in a shroud of silence, the Atlanta skyline a distant glitter beyond the sagging rooftops of her East Side neighborhood. Inside, the living room glowed faintly from a single lamp, its bulb buzzing, as Lena Jordan slumped on the couch, a quilt pulled tight around her shoulders. The TV flickered on mute, Channel 6 looping Kalia's mugshot, the repeat offender label a knife twisting deeper with each replay. Lena's eyes were swollen, her fingers tracing the rim of a cold coffee mug, her mind replaying the school arrest, the expulsion, the lies piling up like bricks. Kalia was still in a cell, her bail hearing delayed until morning, and the apartment felt hollow without her sharp laugh, her late-night tapping on that clunky laptop. The clock ticked past 12, the street outside dead save for the rustle of leaves in a faint breeze. Then the quiet shattered. A crash split the night, the front door splintering inward as 3 figures stormed in, their boots thudding on the warped floorboards. Lena jolted upright, the quilt slipping as she screamed, her voice raw with terror. The intruders were shadows in black hoodies, faces masked by bandanas, eyes glinting with malice. One swung a bat, smashing the lamp into a spray of glass, plunging the room into darkness lit only by the TV's ghostly glow. Another grabbed Lena's arm, yanking her off the couch, her mug shattering as she flailed. "Where's your little hero now?" he snarled, his breath hot against her cheek, shoving her against the wall. The third pulled a can of spray paint, scrawling jagged red slurs across the peeling plaster. "Thief, junkie, get out." Lena fought, her nails clawing at the thug's sleeve, but he slammed her back, her head cracking against the drywall. "Stop, please," she gasped, her voice breaking, but they laughed, a guttural sound that chilled her blood. The bat swung, again splintering the coffee table into kindling, and the spray painter moved to the kitchen, trashing cabinets, plates crashing in a symphony of ruin. Outside, a neighbor banged on their door, shouting, "What's going on?" But the thugs didn't flinch, their chaos methodical, rehearsed. One grabbed Lena's purse, dumping it out, her keys and wallet skittering across the floor, then torched the pile with a flick of a lighter, flames licking up the worn linoleum. Smoke curled thick, stinging her eyes as she coughed, sinking to her knees. The leader, taller than the rest, loomed over her, pulling a folded note from his pocket and tossing it at her feet. "Back off," he growled, his voice muffled but venomous, or next time it's you." They bolted, boots pounding down the stairs, leaving the apartment a smoldering wreck. Lena crawled to the note, her hands trembling as she unfolded it. The words scrawled in black ink. "Kalia started this. End it." Sirens wailed in the distance, too late, as neighbors flooded the hall, their gasps mingling with the crackle of the dying fire. Lena clutched the quilt, sobbing, the slurs glaring down at her like accusations. Her home, her sanctuary, was gone, and her daughter was locked away, unable to stop it. Miles away, Kalia sat in her cell, the concrete icy against her back, unaware of the havoc at home. A guard had let her call Lena earlier, but the line went dead, and now her mind spun with worry. The drug bust, the expulsion, the media storm, it was all Victor, she knew it, his shadow choking her life. Morning came, grey light seeping through the barred window, and her bail hearing dragged her back to court. Lena was there, bruised and hollow-eyed, whispering about the attack through the glass partition. Kalia's fists clenched, her nails digging into her palms, rage boiling over the despair. "They won't break us," she said, her voice fierce, meeting her mom's gaze. "I'm getting out and I'll hit back harder." The judge set bail at $5,000, a sum Lena scraped together with neighbors' help. Their pity, a bitter pill. By noon, Kalia walked free, her grey hoodie pulled tight, the city air sharp with exhaust as she hugged Lena on the courthouse steps. They returned to the apartment, a gutted shell of smoke-stained walls and shattered glass, the slurs still wet, mocking them. Kalia's chest tightened, tears pricking, but she swallowed them, kneeling to salvage her laptop from the wreckage. Its screen was cracked, but it hummed to life, a lifeline in the ruin. "We're not done," she told Lena, her voice steel. "They want us scared. They get war." She sat up in a corner, the laptop balanced on a milk crate, and hacked into Victor's email, her fingers flying over the keys. She'd learned his patterns from coding contests, spotting weak passwords like crescent in seconds. His inbox spilled open, a goldmine of filth. Messages to Hargrove about the drugs, a payment to R for services, and a smug note to Evelyn Hart, the CEO, bragging, "She's down for good." Kalia's pulse raced, her bruised lip curling as she uploaded it all to X, tagging every news outlet in Atlanta. "Crescent Liberty's manager exposed," she captioned, hitting send. Within hours, it exploded, 50,000 views, then 100,000. The internet roaring back to life with a "Victor lies and justice for Kalia." She leaned back, the cracked screen glowing, a fierce grin breaking through her exhaustion. The thugs had hit her family, but she'd struck Victor's core, his secrets bleeding out for the world to see. Lena watched, her hands trembling, but her eyes proud, whispering, "You're unstoppable." Kalia believed it, the tide turning again, her fight clawing back ground. She'd bury him with this, make him choke on his own game. But Victor wasn't choking. In his office, the frosted glass walls rattled as he slammed his fist on the desk, the leak flashing across his monitor. His whiskey glass shattered, amber pooling on the floor, his face a mask of fury. Evelyn Hart's voice crackled through. His phone cold as ice. "You're a liability now. Fix it or you're out." He didn't flinch. He dialed Evelyn back, his voice low, controlled. "She wants to play. We sue her, defamation full force, freeze her account, crush her family's cash. She'll beg to stop." Evelyn paused, then agreed, her tone sharp. "Do it. End this." By nightfall, Crescent Liberty's lawyers filed the suit, a $10 million claim slamming Kalia's name, their press release screaming cyberbullying and false accusations. Her account still holding her $10,000 locked overnight, a digital noose tightening. Victor grinned, leaning back, the city lights glinting through his window. Kalia thought she'd won again, thought her hack was checkmate. She'd learn soon enough. He played for keeps. Kalia didn't see it coming, didn't know the legal storm brewing. She sat amidst the wreckage, her laptop humming, the online firestorm her shield. The thugs had broken her home, but she'd broken Victor's facade and the world was listening. She hugged Lena, whispering, "We'll rebuild," her spirit blazing. But as midnight ticked closer, Evelyn's counterstrike loomed, a blade, aimed at her last lifeline, ready to shred her victory into scraps. What's your stance on Kalia's counterattack? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think she's a genius for hacking Victor's lies wide open. Or number 2 if you'd warn her to watch her back instead. If you're raging at those thugs tearing her life apart, smash that like button and subscribe, because tomorrow's twist will hit like a freight train. Ever think a kid could push a man like Victor this far? What happens when the bank's big guns turn her own fight against her? Keep watching to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. The law firm's office perched on the 10th floor of a glassy Atlanta tower, its walls lined with mahogany panels and shelves groaning under leather-bound books. Kalia Jordan sat at a polished conference table, her grey hoodie swapped for a borrowed blazer that pinched her shoulders, her braids pulled tight into a bun. The air smelled of ink and old paper, a stark contrast to the smoky ruin of her apartment, where she'd spent the night salvaging what she could after the thugs' attack. Her laptop, its cracked screen flickering, sat beside her, a silent witness to the email hack that had blown Victor Grayson's secrets wide open. Across from her, Ms. Torres, her public defender, shuffled papers, her greying curls bouncing as she muttered about corporate overreach. It was 2 days after the leak, and Crescent Liberty's defamation suit had landed like a sledgehammer, $10 million of legal weight aimed at crushing her. The suit hit the news that morning, splashed across every channel. Crescent, Liberty Bank sues teen for defamation, claims false accusations. Victor's press release painted her as a liar, a cyberbully hiding behind a viral sob story, and her bank account, still holding her $10,000, was frozen solid, a digital lock snapped shut by Evelyn Hart's order. Kalia's stomach knotted as she skimmed the complaint, its legalese a maze of threats, injunctions, damages, a demand to retract her posts. Her mom, Lena, sat beside her, hands clasped tight, her face etched with exhaustion from the home invasion's aftermath. The slurs still stained their walls, the note's warning burned into her mind, but Kalia's jaw set firm. "They're scared," she whispered to Lena. "This is them scrambling." Torres agreed, slamming the complaint down with a thud. "It's a bluff," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the hum of the office's air conditioning. "They've got no case if we prove those emails are real." She pulled up Victor's inbox on her own tablet, the hacked messages glowing, orders to Hargrove, payments to Reese, brags to Evelyn about putting her down. Kalia's pulse quickened, her bruised lip twitching into a faint smirk. She'd turned his own words against him, and now Torres would wield them like a blade. The lawyer filed a counterclaim that afternoon, alleging fraud, conspiracy, and racial discrimination, attaching the emails as evidence. "Let's see them wiggle out of this," Torres said, hitting send with a flourish. The hearing came fast, a whirlwind of suits and gavels in the same courthouse where Kalia had beaten the hacking charge. The room buzzed with tension, reporters packing the back, their cameras banned but their pens relentless. Victor sat with his legal team, a trio of slick attorneys in pinstripes, his grey suit pressed sharp, his hazel eyes glinting with confidence. Evelyn Hart wasn't there, her presence a shadow pulling strings from Crescent Liberty's HQ, but Kalia felt her weight in every move. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a voice like gravel, peered over her glasses as Torres stood, her blazer smoothed, her tablet ready. "Your Honor," she began, "this suit is retaliation, pure and simple. My client exposed a manager's corruption, and now they're burying her in paper to silence her." She projected the emails, each one a damning thread. Victor's drug plant order, his thug hiring, his smug victory lap to Evelyn. The courtroom hummed, reporters scribbling, Victor's lawyers shifting uneasily. One stood, a balding man named Carver with a nasal drawl waving a hand. "These are fabricated, Your Honor. Hacked illegally, inadmissible." Torres pounced, her voice rising. "They're authenticated by timestamps, server logs, Crescent's own security. They can't deny their own system." She called Dr. Patel again, the tech expert from the hacking trial, who dissected the files with surgical precision. "No tampering," he said, adjusting his glasses. "These came straight from Grayson's account." The judge's brow furrowed, her pen tapping, and Victor's smirk faded, his fingers drumming a nervous beat on the table. Kalia watched, her heart pounding, as the evidence stacked like bricks. Carver tried to spin it, claiming internal miscommunication, but the judge cut him off, her tone icy. "I've seen enough. The emails stand. The defamation claim lacks merit." She paused, glaring at Victor's team. "Dismissed with prejudice. Counterclaim proceeds." A gasp rippled through the room, and Kalia's breath caught, relief flooding her like warm rain. Torres grinned, whispering, "Settlement's next." Hours later, Crescent Liberty caved, offering $50,000 to drop the counterclaim, their lawyers muttering about reputational risk. Kalia took it, her eyes blazing as she signed, the money a lifeline to rebuild her family's wreckage. Victor stormed out, his face a mask of fury, and she taunted him again, her voice echoing. In the hall. "You're done!" Back home, the apartment still stank of smoke, but Lena pulled out a hidden bottle of cheap wine, pouring 2 glasses with shaky hands. "To you," she said, her voice thick, clinking her glass against Kalia's water tumbler. They laughed. A raw, jagged sound sitting on the floor amidst the debris, the 50,000 a promise of new walls, new hope. Kalia's laptop hummed beside her, the cracked screen a trophy, her tech dreams flickering back to life. She'd beaten Victor, again turned his legal noose into dust, and the bank seemed to retreat, their press release a vague resolution that dodged her name. She leaned back, sipping water, the weight lifting. "We're safe now," she told Lena, believing it, the fight finally hers. But safety was a lie. At Crescent Liberty's HQ, Evelyn Hart sat in her corner office, a sleek cavern of glass and steel overlooking the city's sprawl. Her platinum hair gleamed under recessed lights, her navy suit tailored to a razor's edge, her fingers steepled as she watched the settlement news on a muted TV. Victor paced before her, his tie loosened, his voice a growl. "She's a cockroach, keeps coming back." Evelyn's lips thinned, her grey eyes cold as slate. "Then we stop playing defense," she said, her tone clipped, final. She dialed a number, her voice dropping low. "Set up a robbery, her aunt's store. Frame the girl, make it stick." The thug on the other end grunted, a familiar voice from the home attack, and Evelyn hung up, her gaze locking on Victor. "No more games. She's finished." Across town, Kalia's aunt, Marla, ran a small convenience store on a quiet corner, its neon sign buzzing, Marla's Quick Stop in faded green. She was a stout woman with a warm smile, and hands rough from years of stocking shelves, her greying braids tucked under a cap. Kalia loved that store, its shelves of candy and cheap sodas a refuge from the project's grind. She didn't know Marla was next, didn't know Evelyn's plan was already rolling. That night, as Kalia slept on a salvaged mattress, the thugs moved, their shadows creeping toward the store's back door. They'd stage a break-in, drop Kalia's ID, turn her settlement into a noose. Evelyn leaned back, the city lights glinting off her desk, a faint smile curling her lips. Kalia thought she'd won, thought the bank was backing off. She'd learn soon enough, this was war, and Evelyn fought dirty. Kalia dreamed of code, her app taking shape in loops and lines, the 50,000 fueling her future. She didn't hear the distant sirens, didn't feel the storm brewing. The legal win, the celebration, it was a fleeting glow, a candle before the gust. Lena slept beside her, the wine bottle empty, their laughter a fragile echo in the wreckage. But as dawn crept closer, the trap was set, Evelyn's blade poised to strike, ready to drag Kalia back into the abyss with a crime she'd never touch. Dusk settled over Atlanta's quiet corners, painting the sky a bruised purple as Marla's Quick Stop hummed with its usual evening rhythm. The small convenience store sat on a cracked street, its neon sign flickering, open in stuttering. Green, casting a faint glow across shelves stocked with chips and warm soda. Marla Jordan, Kalia's aunt, stood behind the counter, her stout frame wrapped in a faded apron, her graying braids peeking from a baseball cap. She hummed an old blues tune, ringing up a kid with a candy bar, her rough hands deft on the register. The store was her pride, a lifeline carved from 20 years of grit, a haven where Kalia had spent countless afternoons sorting change and dreaming up code. Tonight, it felt like any other, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and dust, the clock ticking towards 7. But the stillness broke like glass. The back door crashed open, splintering wood across the linoleum, and 3 masked men stormed in, their black hoodies swallowing the dim light. Customers screamed, a woman dropping her basket as she bolted for the exit, her toddler wailing in her arms. Marla spun, her breath catching, but the leader, a wiry figure with a voice like gravel, lunged at her, slamming her against the counter. "Where's the cash?" he barked, his gloved fist smashing the register open, coins spilling like blood. The second thug, stocky and silent, swung a crowbar, shattering a display of canned goods, while the third rifled the shelves, tossing bottles to the floor in a cacophony of glass. Marla fought, shoving back, her cap tumbling off, but the leader grabbed her throat, squeezing until she gasped, her knees buckling. "Stop it!" she rasped, clawing at his arm, but he laughed, a guttural sound, and flung her down, her head cracking against the counter's edge. Blood trickled from her temple, pooling on the floor, and he dropped a wallet, Kalia's ID slipping out, its grainy photo glaring up like a planted flag. "Make it look good," he muttered to his crew, staging the scene, overturned racks, a broken window. Marla crumpled in the chaos. They fled through the back, tires squealing as their van peeled out, leaving the store a wreckage and Marla unconscious, her pulse faint under the flickering fluorescent lights. A neighbor dialing 911 broke the silence, sirens wailing. Closer, but the damage was done, the trap sprung. Kalia woke to pounding on her apartment door, the smoky ruin still her bed after the thug's last attack. She stumbled up, her borrowed blazer swapped back for the grey hoodie, her braids loose from sleep. Lena answered, her face paling as 2 cops barged in, their badges glinting under the bare bulb. "Kalia Jordan, you're under arrest," one said, a burly man with a scar on his jaw, cuffing her before she could blink. "Robbery at Marla's Quick Stop, your ID was there." Kalia's stomach dropped, her voice cracking. "Marla, what happened to her?" The cop smirked, dragging her out. "She's in the hospital, guess you got sloppy this time." Lena lunged, shouting, "She was here all night." But the second cop blocked her, slamming the door as Kalia's sneakers scraped the stairs. The precinct swallowed her again, its concrete walls a familiar cage, the air sour with sweat and despair. She sat in an interrogation room, her wrists raw, her mind spinning. Marla hurt, a robbery, her ID? It didn't add up, not after the settlement, not after she'd beaten Victor's suit. The scarred cop tossed her ID on the table, its plastic edge chipped, and leaned in, his breath stale. "Witnesses saw you running the job. Your aunt's critical, and you're the mastermind." Kalia's chest heaved, tears pricking as she shouted, "I didn't do this, I was home." But he laughed, slamming a photo of Marla's bloodied face, her eyes shut, a ventilator tube snaking from her mouth. "Tell it to the judge, gang girl." By morning, the media erupted, a venomous storm drowning Kalia's name. Channel 6 led the charge, Paul's oily voice booming. Kalia Jordan, fresh off a bank settlement, arrested for robbing her own aunt's store. Marla Jordan clings to life, a victim of her niece's greed. The screen flashed her mugshot. Again, her hollow eyes captioned "Gang Leader" in bold red. A new lie swallowing her hacking win. News vans swarmed the hospital, reporters cornering staff while X flipped savage. "Kalia monster. She played us all." Comments stabbed deeper. "Should have locked her up after the drugs." "Family means nothing to her." Lena watched from their wrecked home, the TV's glow reflecting her sobs, her hands shaking as she dialed Torres, begging for help. Kalia slumped in her cell, the concrete cold against her spine, her hoodie gone, leaving her shivering in a thin shirt. Marla's face haunted her, the blood, the tube, a wound she couldn't unsee. Her aunt, her rock, was fighting to live. And they blamed her. She'd beaten Victor twice, walked free, and now this, a blow that cut to her core. Her fists pounded the wall, her voice breaking. "Why me?" she whispered, the question a plea to the dark. The settlement, her tech dreams, her family's fragile hope, all shredded in a night. Victor's shadow loomed, but this felt bigger, sharper, a hand she couldn't name pulling strings. At Crescent Liberty's HQ, Evelyn Hart watched the news, her platinum hair glinting under her office's stark lights, her navy suit a shield of control. Victor stood beside her, his tie askew, his grin tight as the robbery footage played. Grainy shots of masked men. Kalia's ID, a deliberate drop. "Perfect," she said, her voice icy, final. "But it's not enough." She pulled a USB drive, handing it to a tech lackey in a rumpled shirt. "Doctor this, make it show her at the scene." The lackey nodded, splicing security clips, pasting Kalia's face from her viral video into the chaos, her hoodie a blurry match. By noon, it hit the airwaves, Paul crowing, "Exclusive footage proves Kalia Jordan led the heist." The public swallowed it, outrage boiling. "She's a monster. Put her away for good." Evelyn leaned back, her grey eyes glinting, a predator savoring the kill. Victor paced, his hazel gaze darting to the screen. "She's toast now," he said, but Evelyn's lips thinned. "Not yet, we silence her permanent. Call your guy." She meant a hitman. A shadow Victor kept on speed dial, and he nodded, dialing low. "She's in lockup, make it quick." The line crackled, a raspy voice agreeing, and Evelyn's smile returned, cold as steel. Kalia thought she'd survived. The suit thought her family was safe. She'd learn soon enough this was checkmate, and Evelyn played to win. Kalia didn't hear their plans, didn't see the footage. She curled in her cell, her breath fogging, whispering Marla's name like a prayer. The robbery, the arrest, the lies, they crushed her, her spirit fracturing under the weight. Victor had struck again, but this was deeper, a wound that bled her dry. She rocked, her mind blank, the fight flickering out. "Why me?" she sobbed, the words a broken echo, not knowing Evelyn's blade was sharpening, ready to cut her life to nothing. What's your gut on Kalia's latest fall? Drop a number 1 in the comments if you think she's being crushed unfairly, or number 2 if you'd say she pushed Victor too far. If this twist has you reeling, hit that like button and subscribe, because tomorrow's chapter will shred what's left. Ever wonder how far a kid can bend before she breaks? What if Kalia's next move comes from a cage she can't escape? Stick around to see how low this fight sinks. The jail cell's concrete walls pressed in on Kalia Jordan like a vice, the air heavy with the stench of mildew and unwashed bodies. She sat on a thin cot, her knees pulled tight to her chest, her grey hoodie long gone, replaced by a scratchy jumpsuit that chafed her bruised skin. 3 days had passed since the robbery arrest, since Marla's bloodied face flashed across her mind, a nightmare she couldn't shake. The dim bulb overhead buzzed, casting jagged shadows across the floor, and her braids hung loose, tangled from restless nights. Her world had crumbled. School gone, home trashed, aunt dying, and now this cage, a trap she couldn't outsmart. The media screamed gang leader, her settlement money frozen, her tech dreams dust. She rocked, whispering, "Marla," her voice a cracked plea, her spirit fraying at the edges. Footsteps echoed down the hall, a slow, deliberate thud that snapped her from her haze. A guard loomed at the bars, a hulking man named Dawkins with a shaved head and a scar curling down his neck like a snake. His brown eyes glinted, cold and assessing, as he slid a tray of grey slop through the slot. "Eat up, Jordan," he grunted, his voice thick with disdain. "You're gonna need it for the ride." Kalia's head jerked up, her pulse spiking. "Ride? What ride?" Dawkins smirked, leaning closer, his breath sour with tobacco. "Transfer tomorrow, downtown lockup, bigger fish to fry there." He turned to leave, but something glinted in his hand, a phone, its screen flashing a text she couldn't read. Her mind raced, suspicion clawing through the fog. A transfer? After everything, why now? She watched him lumber off, his boots clanging, and spotted the phone again, slipped into his pocket too casually. Guards weren't supposed to carry those. Not here. She'd coded enough to know a loose thread when she saw one, and Dawkins was unraveling. She waited, counting minutes until his shift circled back. At 2 in the morning, the jail quieted, the other inmates snoring, and Dawkins returned, checking locks with a lazy swagger. Kalia stood, gripping the bars, her voice low. "Who you?" "Texting Dawkins? Someone paying you to watch me?" His head snapped around, eyes narrowing, but his flinch gave him away. "Shut it, kid," he hissed, stepping closer, but Kalia pressed on, her words sharp. Victor Grayson, right? He's got you on a leash. Dawkins froze, his scar twitching, and she knew she'd hit bone. He lunged, slamming a fist against the bars, rattling them, but she didn't flinch, her dark eyes locked on his. I can prove it, she lied, bluffing hard. Got his emails, you're in them. It was a shot in the dark, but his face paled, sweat beading on his brow. You don't know squat, he snarled, but his voice cracked and he fumbled the phone, dropping it through the bars. Kalia dove, snatching it before he could react, her fingers trembling as she swiped it on. A text glowed. V says move her tonight. Quiet. Her breath caught, adrenaline surging. Victor. Dawkins was his dog, and quiet meant bad. She thumbed the record button, shoving the phone at him. Say it, Dawkins. You're his errand boy. He lunged again, reaching through, but she danced back, holding it high. Say it, or this goes live. His growl turned desperate, his meaty hand clawing air. Fine. Grayson's got me. He paid for the drugs, the store, all of it. Kalia's heart pounded, the confession raw gold in her hands. She stopped recording, pocketing the phone, her mind spinning. She had proof, real proof, but she was still caged, and tonight meant danger closing fast. Dawn broke grey and heavy, the transfer van idling outside, its engine a low growl. Kalia's wrists were cuffed again, Dawkins shoving her into the back, his scar twitching with fury. Another guard, a wiry kid named Perez, drove, oblivious to the storm brewing. The van rolled through Atlanta's back streets, tires humming on wet pavement, the city a blur of sodium lights and graffiti. Kalia sat hunched, the phone tucked in her jumpsuit, her mind racing for an out. She'd beaten Victor before, turned, his lies against him, but this felt different, final. Then the van jolted, a pothole rocking it hard, and Perez cursed, slowing down. Dawkins shifted, his hand brushing his belt, and Kalia saw it, a loose cuff key glinting on the floor. She moved fast, silent, scooping the key with her foot, sliding it to her hands. The cuffs clicked open, her wrists free, and she waited, breath held, as the van hit a red light. Perez yawned, Dawkins glared out the window, and Kalia lunged, slamming her elbow into Dawkins's throat. He gagged, clawing at her, but she shoved the door, tumbling out onto the asphalt, her knees scraping raw. Perez shouted, brakes squealing, but she bolted, weaving through alleys. The phone clutched tight, her lungs burned, her jumpsuit snagging. On fences, but she didn't stop, ducking into a derelict lot, its shadows swallowing her. Sirens wailed, distant but closing, and she crouched behind a rusted dumpster, uploading Dawkins's confession to X with shaking hands. Victor's guard spills all, she typed, hitting send. The post exploded. 10,000 views in minutes, then 50. Hashtags flaring. Kalia fights back. Crescent corrupt. Protests sparked outside the precinct. Chants of free. Kalia echoing through the dawn. Strangers rallying as the confession looped online. News picked it up. Channel 6 scrambling to spin it, but the tide turned, outrage boiling over Victor's name. Kalia watched from her hiding spot, her cracked lips parting in a ragged grin. She'd escaped, struck back, her voice roaring again. Marla was still in the hospital, her family broken, but this was a lifeline, a spark to reignite the fight. She leaned against the dumpster, catching her breath, believing the worst was over, that the truth would shield her now. But Evelyn Hart didn't blink. In her glass-walled office, the city sprawling below, she watched the viral clip, her platinum, hair catching the morning light, her navy suit a fortress of calm. Victor burst in, his tie askew, his face red. She's out, that idiot Dawkins screwed us. Evelyn's grey eyes flicked to him, cold as frost. Then we end it, she said, her voice a blade. She dialed a number, her tone flat, lethal. She's loose. Find her. Finish her. The hitman on the other end, a lean shadow named Vance with a voice like rust, grunted assent. Warehouse District, on it. Evelyn hung up, her lips thinning. No more mistakes. She's a ghost by tonight. Vance moved fast, his black sedan prowling the streets, a silenced pistol on the seat beside him. He'd tracked targets before, knew the alleys Kalia hid in, her orange jumpsuit a beacon in the dusk. Evelyn leaned back, the confession clip muted on her screen, her fingers tapping a slow rhythm. Victor paced, sweat staining his collar, but she ignored him, her mind on the kill. Kalia thought she'd won, thought her escape and upload were checkmate. She didn't know a bullet was hunting her, Evelyn's final play to bury her for good. The protests grew, the truth spread, but time was slipping and Kalia's hideout was no fortress. Kalia didn't hear the sedan's purr, didn't see Vance's shadow creeping closer. She huddled by the dumpster, her breath fogging in the chill, the phone's battery blinking red. Dawkins's words were out, the world waking up, and she clung to that hope flickering through the exhaustion. Marla's face, Lena's tears, they fueled her, a vow to keep fighting. But as night fell, the warehouse district loomed silent, its hulks of steel and rust a maze, and Vance's steps whispered nearer, his gun steady. She'd broken free, turned the tide, but the storm wasn't over, and Evelyn's blade was poised to strike. Night cloaked the abandoned warehouse district on Atlanta's edge, its rusted hulks of steel and crumbling brick swallowed by shadows cast from a sliver of moon. Kalia Jordan crouched behind a stack of splintered pallets, her orange jumpsuit, snagged and filthy from her escape, her breath fogging in the crisp air. The dumpster she'd hidden by earlier was blocks away, her legs aching from the sprint, her cracked phone clutched tight, its battery at 5%. Dawkins's confession had gone viral, protests roaring online and in the streets, a lifeline she clung to as her chest heaved. Her braid stuck to her sweat-slicked neck, her bruised knees throbbing, but she grinned faintly, believing the truth had bought her time, that the hit Victor hinted at was stalled by the chaos. She was wrong. A faint crunch of gravel snapped her head up, her pulse spiking as a shadow moved between the warehouses, lean and deliberate. Vance, Evelyn Hart's hitman, slipped through the dark, his black jacket blending with the night, his silenced pistol a dull gleam in his grip. He'd tracked her from the van's drop point, his boots silent on the cracked pavement, his rust-dry voice a memory from Evelyn's call. Finish her. Kalia didn't see him yet, didn't hear the soft click as he chambered around, but the air thickened, instinct screaming danger. She shifted, peering through a gap in the pallets, her eyes darting for an exit, the maze of steel and rot her only shield. Vance closed in, 30 feet, then 20, his steps a predator's stalk, his scarred face taut with focus. Kalia spotted him then, a flicker of movement against a rusted silo, and her stomach lurched. She bolted, her sneakers pounding the ground, weaving through a narrow alley of stacked crates, her breath ragged. A muted pop split the air. The silenced, shot grazing her arm, blood blooming hot and sharp through the jumpsuit. She stumbled, gasping, but didn't stop, diving behind a toppled forklift, its metal cold against her back. Vance cursed under his breath, reloading, his eyes scanning the dark, her orange a beacon he wouldn't lose. Kalia's mind raced, pain searing her arm, but she spotted a length of rusted pipe jutting from a pile of debris, its jagged end glinting faintly. She grabbed it, her grip slick with sweat and blood, and waited, her heartbeat a drum in her ears. Vance rounded the forklift, his pistol raised, and she swung, the pipe cracking against his wrist, sending the gun skittering across the concrete. He roared, lunging at her, his fist slamming her jaw, stars bursting in her vision. She fell, the pipe clattering, but rolled, kicking his knee hard, a crunch buckling him. She scrambled up, snatching the pipe again, and swung with all she had, catching his temple, blood spraying as he crumpled, his breath a wet rasp. She stood over him, panting, the pipe trembling in her hands, his pistol a yard away but useless to her shaking fingers. Vance groaned, half-conscious, his scarred face slack, and Kalia dropped to her knees, ripping the phone from his pocket. Hers was dead now, its battery gone, but his glowed alive, a lifeline. "Talk," she hissed, thumbing record, shoving, Gait at his bloodied mouth. "Who sent you?" Vance coughed, his voice slurred but clear. "Hart, Evelyn Hart, wanted you dead after the guard's tape." Kalia's chest tightened, Evelyn's name a new blade, sharper than Victor's. She stopped recording, her arm throbbing, and opened X, her fingers clumsy as she logged in, broadcasting live from Vance's phone. The screen flickered, her bruised face filling it, blood streaking her cheek, her voice raw but fierce. "This is Kalia Jordan, I'm alive. Crescent Liberty's CEO sent this guy to kill me. Here's his confession. She panned to Vance, his head lolling, his words slurring out again under her glare. Hart's orders. Silence her. The stream exploded, thousands tuning in, comments flooding. She's alive. Kalia lives. Protests swelled outside the bank's HQ, sirens wailing closer as her location pinged live. Kalia's legs shook, but she stood, the pipe her crutch, believing she'd won. That Evelyn's mask was off, the cops minutes away. To end this nightmare. Police lights flashed red and blue through the warehouse gaps, boots pounding as officers swarmed, their shouts a blur. They found her bloodied but standing, Vance groaning at her feet and cuffed him, medics rushing to her side. She handed over the phone, the stream still rolling, her voice steady as she told them, "It's all there. Hart's behind it." The cops nodded, grim-faced, hauling Vance off as an ambulance siren cut the night, her arm patched with gauze on the ride to the hospital. Marla was there, still critical, and Kalia sobbed, relief and rage mingling as she thought of Lena, of home. The truth was out, Evelyn exposed, and she'd survived. She leaned back, the stretcher rattling, whispering, "It's over." But Evelyn didn't falter. In her glass-walled office, the city a glittering sprawl below, she watched the live stream, her platinum hair catching the dawn's first light, her navy suit uncreased despite the hour. Victor burst in, his face ashen, his tie a crumpled knot. "She's alive, on TV, we're done!" Evelyn's grey eyes flicked to him, icy calm slicing his panic. "Not yet," she said, her voice a shard of glass. She pulled a file from her desk, a forged death certificate. Kalia's name typed in stark black, deceased shootout, warehouse district. She dialed her press lackey, Paul, her tone flat. "Release this. She's dead in a gang fight. End the story." By morning, Channel 6 ran it, Paul's voice oily with fake grief. Tragic end for Kalia Jordan, killed in a shootout after escaping custody, a troubled teen lost to violence. The screen flashed the certificate, her mugshot beside it, deceased in red. Protests faltered, confusion rippling online, some believing, others screaming fake. Evelyn leaned back, her lips curling faintly, the forgery her shield. Victor stared, sweat beading his brow, but nodded, clinging to her plan. "Cops saw her alive," he muttered, and Evelyn shrugged. "They'll bury it. She's a ghost now." The hospital buzzed with Kalia's survival, but Evelyn's lie spread faster, a noose to choke her truth. Kalia didn't see the broadcast, didn't know her death was news. She lay in a hospital bed, her arm bandaged, her jaw swollen. Marla's room down the hall. Cops guarded her door, their radios crackling, her live stream still looping online, protests raging. She'd survived Vance, exposed Evelyn, turned the hit into her loudest cry yet. Her cracked lips parted, whispering, "I made it," belief hardening through the pain. Lena was coming, Marla was breathing, and the world knew. But as dawn crept higher, Evelyn's forgery took root, a lie to erase her, and Kalia's fight hung on a thread, the storm far from spent. Morning light bled through the hospital blinds, casting thin stripes across Kalia Jordan's bruised face as she lay in a sterile bed, her bandaged arms stiff against the sheets. The TV, bolted to the wall, flickered on low, Channel 6's broadcast, looping a lie that stopped her breath. Kalia Jordan, 15, killed in a warehouse shootout after escaping custody. Her mugshot flashed, her hollow eyes captioned, "Deceased," beside a forged certificate, Paul's oily voice droning. About a tragic end to a troubled life. Her heart slammed, her cracked lips parting in a silent gasp. She was alive, blood pumping, yet the world mourned her, Evelyn Hart's forgery swallowing her truth. Nurses bustled past, oblivious, and the cop outside her door yawned. His radio, silent. She fumbled for the remote, muting it, her mind racing. They'd buried her, erased her fight with a pen stroke. Lena burst in, her coat askew, her eyes red from a sleepless night at Marla's bedside. "You're awake," she choked, hugging Kalia tight, her warmth a lifeline in the sterile chill. "Marla's stable, but this," she gestured at the TV, tears spilling. "They're saying you're dead." Kalia gripped her mom's hand, her voice hoarse but fierce. "It's Evelyn. She's covering her tracks after the hitman." Lena's face crumpled, but Kalia's jaw set, resolve hardening through the pain. "I'm not done. They think I'm a ghost, I'll haunt them." She slid from the bed, her legs shaky, the jumpsuit swapped for borrowed sweats, her arm throbbing under the gauze. The cop glanced in, nodding, assuming her a grieving relative, and she saw her chance. Invisibility. She slipped out that afternoon, Lena smuggling her a janitor's uniform from the hospital basement, a baggy grey jumpsuit and cap to hide her braids. The protests had faltered, confusion rippling online as Kalia lives clashed with Rip Kalia, Evelyn's lie sowing doubt. Kalia moved through Atlanta's back streets, her cap low, her cracked phone dead, but Vance's still in her pocket, its battery at 20%. Crescent Liberty's HQ loomed downtown, a glass tower piercing the skyline, its sleek facade a mask for the rot within. She'd beaten Victor, survived Evelyn's hit, and now she'd strike at their heart, her death a cloak to slip past their guard. The janitor's keycard, swiped from a laundry cart, buzzed her in through a service door, her pulse a drumbeat as she stepped into the belly of the beast. The bank's lower floors hummed with late-day bustle, tellers counting cash, guards pacing, none sparing a glance at the slight figure pushing a mop. Kalia's sneakers squeaked on the marble, her cap shadowing her face, her bandaged arm hidden under the sleeve. She rode a freight elevator to the 10th floor, Evelyn's domain. Its halls quiet save for the hum of servers behind locked doors. A janitor's closet became her base, a cramped space of brooms and bleach, where she pulled Vance's phone and a scavenged USB cord, jury-rigging a link to the bank's Wi-Fi. Her coding skills flared, fingers dancing over the screen as she breached their firewall, a backdoor left by sloppy IT exposing Evelyn's private server. She grinned, her split lip stinging, the thrill of the hack a spark in the dark. Files spilled open, a digital flood of filth. Evelyn's hitman order, coded as cleanup, emails to Victor about the forgery, and a memo titled Vault Contingency. Kalia's breath caught, her eyes scanning the plan. A bomb in the basement vault wired to detonate remotely, a terrorist act to pin on her posthumously. Her stomach twisted, the stakes soaring, but she worked fast, uploading every byte to the bank's public screens, overriding their feeds. Lobby TVs flickered, then blared her evidence, Evelyn's voice echoing from a recorded call. "Frame her as the bomber. End this." Employees froze, gasps rippling as tellers dropped pens. Guards stared, the glass walls trembling with the truth. Kalia slipped to the top floor, her mop a prop as she reached Evelyn's office, its frosted door. Ajar. Evelyn stood inside, her platinum hair glinting under recessed lights, her navy suit crisp as she barked into a phone. Victor paced beside her, his grey suit rumpled, his hazel eyes wild. "She's dead on paper," he snapped, but Evelyn cut him off, spotting Kalia through the glass. Her grey eyes narrowed, recognition flashing, and Kalia dropped the mop, stepping in, her voice raw. "Not dead yet. Your screens say it all." Evelyn's lips thinned, her hand slipping to a drawer. But Kalia held up Vance's phone, still streaming live from her hack. "The world's watching, you're done." Employees pounded the door, shouts rising as the screens looped Evelyn's orders, chaos erupting below. Victor lunged, his fist swinging, but Kalia dodged, her bandaged arm screaming as she shoved him back, his stumble cracking a chair. Evelyn laughed, a cold, jagged sound, pulling a remote from the drawer, its red button glinting. "Too late," she said, her voice ice. "You're the bomber now." She pressed it, a distant rumble shaking the building, the vault's bomb igniting, in a muffled roar. Glass shattered somewhere below, screams piercing the air, and Evelyn's smile widened, her plan snapping shut. "They'll bury you as a terrorist, dead or alive." Kalia's blood froze, the floor trembling under her feet, smoke curling up from the lower levels. Employees fled, their shouts a cacophony, and Victor scrambled back, his face ashen. "You're insane," he yelled at Evelyn, but she ignored him, her grey eyes locked on Kalia, daring her to run. Kalia didn't. She held the phone higher, the live stream spiking to millions, her voice steady despite the quake. She did this. Evelyn Hart bombed her own bank to frame me. I'm alive, and she's caught. The building groaned, sprinklers hissing, but the feed held, her defiance a beacon through the chaos. Evelyn's grin faltered, her hand twitching, but sirens wailed closer, police flooding the streets below. Kalia backed out, her sneakers slipping on wet marble, the phone her shield as she hit the stairwell, smoke stinging her lungs. The bomb was real, Evelyn's final twist to bury her in rubble and lies, but she'd turned it back, her hack a spotlight on the truth. Victor cowered in the office. Evelyn stood rigid, her navy suit a stark silhouette against the chaos, her remote useless now. Kalia reached the lobby, coughing. The glass facade cracked, employees scrambling as cops stormed in, their radios crackling her name. She didn't stop, weaving through the crush. Her death, a national headline, flipped. Live by her own hand. The bomb's roar faded. A contained blast thanks to the vault steel, but the damage was done. Crescent Liberty's pristine shell shattered. Kalia stumbled outside, the air sharp with ash, her phone dying as the stream cut. Her survival, a scream against Evelyn's lie. She'd exposed the CEO, turned the trap into her loudest strike, but the building smoldered, Evelyn's frame up a shadow she couldn't shake. Cops closed in, their shouts lost in the din, and she braced, knowing this wasn't the end, not yet. Smoke billowed from Crescent Liberty Bank's ruined lobby, the glass facade a jagged maw as the vault bomb's detonation rattled downtown Atlanta, its muffled roar swallowed by steel walls, but its shockwave shattering windows into glittering shards. Kalia Jordan stumbled through the chaos, her janitor's jumpsuit soaked with sprinkler water, her bandaged arms screaming as she coughed ash from her lungs. Sirens wailed, red and blue lights slashing through the haze, cops swarming the plaza with shouts lost in the din. Employees fled, their suits streaked with soot, their screams piercing the night as the building groaned, sprinklers hissing a futile rain. Kalia's cracked phone was dead, its final stream cut, but her hack had lit the world ablaze, Evelyn Hart's orders looping online, her bomb a confession no lie could bury. She tripped, her sneakers slipping on wet marble, the cops closing in, their radios crackling her name, alive despite the forged death certificate. A hand grabbed her elbow, rough but steady, yanking her into a service hall. She spun, fist raised, but it was a janitor, an older man named Amos with a grizzled beard, hand eyes sharp under a cap. "Saw your video," he rasped, his voice thick with years of smoke. "You're not dying here." He dragged her through a maze of back corridors, past flickering exit signs. The bomb's rumble fading as concrete muffled the chaos. Her chest heaved, gratitude choking her words, and he shoved her out a side door, the alley cool and dark. Sirens a distant wail. "Run," he said, vanishing back inside, his shadow her savior. Kalia bolted, her legs jelly but her will iron, weaving through Atlanta's underbelly, the city alive with protest chants echoing her name. News vans swarmed the bank, Channel 6 scrambling as Evelyn's forgery crumbled, Paul's voice faltering on air. Reports conflict, Kalia Jordan may be alive. Her death unraveled, X roaring with Kalia lives, millions watching her hack loop, Evelyn's remote trigger a viral noose. She hid in a boarded-up shop, its dust thick, her breath fogging as she shed the jumpsuit, pulling her borrowed sweats tight. Marla was stable, Lena waiting, and she'd survived again, her truth a torch burning through the lies. But Evelyn wasn't. Done, not until Kalia faced her, ended this face-to-face. 2 days later, Evelyn Hart stood on a makeshift stage outside Crescent Liberty's smoldering HQ, her platinum hair glinting under floodlights, her navy suit pristine despite the ruin. Behind her, cameras clicked, reporters jostled, her victory speech a polished lie. A tragic attack by a disturbed teen now deceased. We'll rebuild, stronger. Victor Grayson flanked her, his grey suit crisp, his hazel eyes darting, clinging to her. Narrative. The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical, protest simmering blocks away. Evelyn's grey eyes gleamed, her voice smooth as she waved off the bomb as Kalia's final act. The forged certificate her shield, the bank's stock steadying under her grip. She thought she'd won, thought the rubble buried Kalia's, Fight! Then the crowd parted, gasps rippling as Kalia stepped forward alive, her sweat stained, her braids loose, her bandaged arm stark against her skin. Beside her stood a man, tall and broad, his dark skin etched with years, his suit charcoal and sharp, his eyes a mirror of hers. Darius Jordan, her father, the bank's secret owner, his presence a thunderclap, silencing the plaza. Reporters froze. Cameras swiveling, Evelyn's face paling as Kalia climbed the stage, her cracked voice cutting through. "I'm not dead. She bombed her own bank to frame me." Darius gripped her shoulder, his voice deep, commanding. "I've owned Crescent, Liberty for years, testing it undercover. You failed, Hart." The crowd erupted, shouts drowning Evelyn's stammer as Darius laid it bare. He'd bought the bank a decade ago, a silent stake to root out rot, his daughter's ordeal, his breaking point. She faced racism, setups, murder attempts, all under. "Your watch," he said, his gaze piercing Evelyn, then Victor. "You're done." Cops surged forward, badges flashing, cuffing Evelyn as she twisted, her navy suit rumpling, her grey eyes wild. "This is a lie," she spat. But the hack's evidence, Vance's confession, Dawkins's tape, they chained her, her remote trigger a shackle no lawyer could break. Victor bolted, shoving through, but a cop tackled him, his face hitting asphalt, his game over. Evelyn's arrest hit the airwaves, a national shockwave. Crescent Liberty CEO charged in bomb plot, teen alive. The bank's overhaul began that night, Darius at the helm, firing corrupt execs, vowing transparency, his voice booming in a press room. No more discrimination, no more lies. Kalia stood beside him, her bruises a badge, her eyes fierce as he pledged her 50,000 back, a fund to rebuild her tech dreams, Marla's care, Lena's home. The crowd cheered, strangers hugging her, her death a myth shattered by her survival, a symbol rising from the ash. She hugged Lena, Marla awake now, their tears a quiet victory in the hospital's hum. Days later, Kalia walked the bank's ruined lobby, its glass swept away, workers hauling debris under Darius's watch. She wore fresh jeans, a new jacket, her arm healing, her spirit scarred but unbroken. The world knew her now, her fight a spark igniting calls for industry reform, banks scrambling to audit their own rot. She climbed the steps, the city sprawling below, and whispered to the wind, "This isn't the end." Her view hardened, a promise to fight racism beyond Crescent Liberty, her survival a torch for others crushed by systems built to break them. Evelyn rotted in a cell, Victor too, their empire dust. But Kalia's war stretched wider. Her voice, a roar no cage could silence. She didn't revel in fame, didn't bask in the headlines. Teen topples bank corruption. She sat with Marla, holding her hand, the beep steady, and with Lena planning a new home, the 50,000 a seed. Darius watched her, pride in his eyes, his undercover years a gift to her now, a legacy she'd wield. The bank stood, battered, but reborn, its slogan shifting, fairness first. Kalia smiled, soft but fierce, her tech sketches reborn on a new laptop, her app a dream to lift kids like her. Evelyn's bomb had failed, her lies crumbled, and Kalia's life flipped the script, a reversal no one saw coming, a girl alive against all odds vowing to change the world. Kalia Jordan's journey through unrelenting racial injustice reveals profound truths about resilience, systemic bias, and the power of truth. Her story teaches us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to fight through it. Kalia faced humiliation, false arrests, and even a hitman, yet she turned each blow into a weapon, exposing corruption with grit and ingenuity. Her persistence shows that one voice, armed with evidence and resolve, can topple giants, no matter how entrenched. The bank's racism wasn't just personal, it was a system rigged to crush her, from Teller's sneers to Evelyn's bomb. This underscores how prejudice festers in institutions, often cloaked as policy or protocol, and demands we question who those systems serve. Her father Darius's reveal as the owner flips the narrative, proving that power can hide in unexpected places, waiting to strike when least expected. It's a reminder that allies can emerge from shadows, but only if the fight forces their hand. Kalaya's survival, aided by strangers like Amos, highlights community's quiet strength. Small acts can shift fates. Yet, her vow to battle industry-wide, racism at the end signals the war isn't won. It's a call to keep pushing beyond one victory. Truth alone isn't enough. It needs amplification, action, persistence. Kalia's story urges us to stand up, speak out, and dismantle injustice, not just endure it. What do you take from Kalia's fight? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did her resilience inspire you, or does systemic bias hit closer to home? If her story moved you, hit like, subscribe, and share to spread her message. Thanks for joining this journey. Here's to building a world where fairness isn't a fight but a right. Stay bold, stay just.